What's going on, everybody? This is Renegade number one, aka the Feminist Killer, hashtag Logitorian. The reality of male suffering. Now, for all of us who have been raised by our fathers or even by our mothers, we've been taught that we shouldn't show emotion, that, emotion is for weak men. And I'm just here to tell you that all of that is bullshit, right? Now, I do believe men should control their emotions, but being emotionless is something that is not realistic. But I see when fathers raise their sons, they usually don't give the right advice. They give morbid advice, right? You need to be tough, you don't need to cry, you don't need to do those type of things. But in reality, when you tell when young boys are told at a young age that they can't feel or they can't display certain emotions because, again, it's gonna make them look weak, essentially you're taking away that person's humanity, right? You are creating an apathetic individual, right? A person who is emotionless. And so if I wasn't meant to show emotion, biologically speaking, I wouldn't have the ability to cry. I wouldn't have the ability to be sad, right? And so when you condition a young man to be emotionless or not to have emotion, you're creating you're creating male suffering for that person. There's so many health problems, high blood pressure, cancer, diabetes, or, any type of health problems when a man has to keep his emotions bottled up, and it's at the end of the day, when I hear fathers say, "Oh, you need to do this and you can't think that way," you're giving ultimately morbid advice. It's not it's 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 the worst type of advice you can give somebody, is advice that's unhealthy in the long run, right? Now, you should be able to control your emotions as a man, but being emotionless is not realistic. And a lot of men, they end up turning to suicide, they end up turning to drugs because, again, they can't vent. They're not confident with venting about their emotions because they know if a man admits that he's a victim, if a man admits that he feels a certain type of way, he already knows society is going to perceive him as less of a man, and so you got a lot of men who are insecure about showing emotions. And then when you have a man who has kids, he's going to project his insecurities onto his kids. And then the cycle just continues, right? And so the black pill truth is you got to be able to show emotion and not really care about how people react to it, right? And so doing research and looking at things, it's sad that the suicide rate with the males is higher for a reason, right? Male mental health is worse. Why do women live longer? Is because people care for them more. They're seen as fragile creatures. It's okay for them to have emotions. It's always been a double standard, but at the same time, there's this push for equality, but no one's pushing for justice for men as far as mental health or physical health, right? And most men are being socialized to suffer, and they think that shit is okay. Men are self-sabotaging themselves. It's not women that's doing it. It's really us. Father teaching his son to be unhealthy, to think unhealthy. And then when that son grows up, he's teaching his son to think unhealthy. And so, oh, you can't have emotion because emotions is for pussies. That's a person who's naive about human emotions. Again, I'll say that one more time. Like, if you're a person that's giving advice to a younger man saying, "Oh, you don't need emotion," and all that type of bullshit, you are a naive individual and you need to do research on human emotions and understand that you're causing more mental harm to that person when you tell them and condition them to think that way. And so most men don't even realize that they're being conditioned to suffer. They don't even mind it because they think it's going to make them more attractive. Like, fuck what the women find attractive. Do what makes you healthy. You understand? I'm not about to sit here and suppress my fucking emotions because a bitch thinks it looks cool. It makes me look tough. Like, ultimately, when a male does that, he tries to be overly compensating with his emotions. When he tries to overcompensate with his emotions, he's really displaying his insecurities and showing me that he doesn't really know. He really doesn't have an idea of what masculinity is. He's really trying to live up to a societal standard of what a man is supposed to be. And I'll tell you right now, at least for those who are taking a black pill, we all know that society's definition of a man is clearly favored in the interest of a female. You know, everything is built towards a female, and the reality is, as long as you live, you're gonna be expected to put up with a lot more stress, a lot of more bullshit, because we're perceived to be mentally tougher and physically tougher. And again, regardless if we're physically tough or not, it doesn't negate the fact that we can't show emotion. Right? It shouldn't negate the fact that we can't show emotion. That's what I meant to say. So, again, for you guys who have, for you brothers who do have kids, or, you had a son or whatever, don't teach them that same dried up traditional rhetoric that your father taught you. Break the cycle. It's okay for your son to be emotional at times. Because when you tell your son that he can't show emotions, then you create an insecure man, and then that shit trickles into your adulthood. It fucks you up. You got men that are afraid of crying because they're afraid of how women will perceive them. It's sad. It's laughable to me. You got brothers killing themselves because they're afraid of asking for help. You got brothers who are victimized, right? You got men who are victimized and they're afraid to admit they're victims because they're afraid of being perceived as a weak male or not being labeled as a quote unquote real man. I'm just letting you know right now, if it's not healthy, it's not natural. If somebody gives you unhealthy advice, morbid advice, then that should be a sign that it's not natural, right? It's not natural for a man to just go through life thinking his shit doesn't stink and that nothing gets to him, But the thing is, men are conditioned to compete with each other in violent ways, and then ultimately you're conditioning men to destroy men. And then you're conditioning them to pedestalize women. So what do you think is going to happen? So, ultimately, the sad reality is most men won't get the message. They're going to try to walk around with this macho mentality that, I got to be tough all the time. It's to me, I'm not afraid to show emotion. I'm not afraid to cry. Shit, if I wasn't meant to cry, I wouldn't have tear ducts. You understand? So, to me, I think it's very important for you as a man to reevaluate what it really means to be human. Regain your humanity. That's what the black pill is about. Regaining your humanity, undoing the indoctrination that society told you that you need to be labeled a real man. If you are a man who's 40 years old and you've been battling with insecurities, it's never too late to rediscover your humanity. Understand your father, He projected his insecurities onto you because he didn't know what a real man was. You know what a real man is. A person that thinks for himself, a person who obviously takes care of his business, but at the same time, what I noticed about, the older generation of men, especially the baby boomer generation, a lot of them, grew up in that type of environment where they couldn't show emotion and they were probably abused as a kid. I'm not about all of that. And so, hey, it's a reality that we all have to come to, is that there's never going to be an equal ground with men and women. Somebody has to have an advantage. And understand that society is going to condition you to be inferior to women and to be a servant to women. You understand? If you are a man raised by a single mother, right, she's going to condition you to be a servant to women because that's what's deemed a real man. Don't follow. I advise, all of you to realize that following mainstream ideas gets you following mainstream ideas creates a mainstream mindset. So if you follow a sheep mentality, you're going to become a sheep. Or sheep ideas, you're going to become a sheep. Period. But, that's the number one thing that we have to focus on, because again, men, we don't live. Why do you think male life expectancy is so short? Because we got to deal with the most bullshit. Physical labor, the mental stress, all of it. The expectations, it's tough. Men are expendable in society. No one gives a fuck about us. We get thrown to the side. We end up homeless. All of those type of things. A woman, she'll always have another man to hop on. She'll always have she can always be a dependent. And that's the reality. Men are expected to be independent, while if women are independent, that's a bonus. They don't really have to be. They can be dependent and everybody's okay with that. But if you're a man who's a dependent, you're not really looked at as a real man. And that's just the reality behind it. If you don't have, a certain lifestyle, if you don't conduct yourself a certain way, you're not going to be a real man. And I say, that's all bullshit. That's blue pilled advice. And that's why I'm very leery about taking advice from baby boomer men, because most of them are blue pilled down to the bone. They believe in that traditional, oh, man should carry the load type bullshit. And I'm telling you right now, if you follow traditionalism, you're still following blue pill values. Worry about yourself. Don't worry about no chick. Don't worry about what other men are saying about you, because at the end of the day, none of it matters. But this is Renegade number 1. Like the video, share, subscribe, peace.